Welcome one and all to another edition of the Defo Show with Lubie here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network, brought to you by Water Cleanup of Florida. When life gets salty, make yourself a margarita. When water damage gets you mold, call Water Cleanup of Florida. When disaster strikes in your home or business, you need specialized, fast, and reliable services. Water Cleanup of Florida understands how an unexpected property damage can overtake your life or business. Don't stress. Allow our 60-plus years of combined experience to handle your restoration project from start to finish. Michael, Robert, George, and the rest of the water cleanup team are prepared to handle disasters of all sizes. 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Look, I personally have talked about this quite often. My wife and I had some water damage. My wife was begging me to look into it. I was being stupid and tone deaf. Finally, I looked at it. We gave Michael a call, and he came out. There was issues. They took care of it. They were spectacular. Our association wasn't very helpful, but they were. They were timely. They did an amazing job. And because of their contractors, it looked as good as new. Water Cleanup of Florida is also a fully licensed, insured, like I just said, and general contractor that provides one-stop shopping. Again, they'll find the issue. They'll fix it. And it'll be hard for you who know where the issue was to find where it was after the fact, because they do such a great job. They service Miami, Broward, and Palm Beach counties. Call Michael anytime on his personal cell, 954-579-0356. Again, that's 954-579-0356, or visit their website, wcufl.com. You can follow them on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Water Cleanup FL. Also, don't want to just take my word for it. Google, where we find so much in life. With over 80 5-star reviews, Google will definitely lead you the way of Water Cleanup of Florida. Water Cleanup of Florida, if you have the schmutz, they have the guts. Miami Heat has had a very schmutzy season compared to last year. They were a 1 seed. They were one shot away from getting within the NBA Finals. The shooting's been off. The rebounding's been off. The defense has been off. It's been a year. Last time they played a Pistons team actively trying to lose, like a team that had lost 21 of 22 at the time, which then sat 5 guys on top of that. That Miami Heat team almost lost to that Pistons team. We're down late in the fourth quarter. Jimmy Butler put on his cape, scored, I think, 19 points in the fourth quarter. I don't know. He went insane in the fourth quarter, carried the Miami Heat to a victory. They now are within 1 game of the 6th spot. But it feels compared to last year. We talked about it with NBA writer-reporter Sean Deveney right here, the Defo Show with Lubie, on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
Jeff DeForest and Mike Lubitz. And that little clip, I don't know how easily audible it was to you. But, we've been playing it for a long time. It was actually from a Lubie family Seder. Where everybody was screaming at each other. No, he was a psychotic fan at one time, and would be. Do you still do that? You still yell and scream at the television set, Lubie?
I bitch and moan the whole time.
Yeah, I think you've been placed on a dilaudid drip when you're watching sports, because you've calmed down considerably, including although upset. And we welcome to the show one of our favorites here when it comes to NBA analysis, just a real gentleman overall, Sean Deveney of Heavy.com joins us, a longtime NBA analyst and writer. And welcome, Sean. How are you? Good to have you on the program.
Well, thanks for having me, people. How are you guys?
Good morning.
We'd be okay, except, we're just so typical of like sports talk today, where, the Heat win 118-105 last night. And Lubie is much more inclined to do this than I am. And he's screaming that this was a horrible effort by the Miami Heat, and what a joke it was that they needed like late game heroics from Jimmy Butler to pull away from a Detroit team that had the lead on him in the fourth quarter. And who are the Pistons to sit 5 guys during a ball game? I mean, who played for them last night? Isaiah Thomas? Does Lubie have a right as a fan? Obviously, he has a right. Should we qualify him as even remotely sane for screaming that the Heat suck and that they were life and death to beat Detroit last night? Makes them ammunition for this type of attack.
Yeah, certainly you're trying to stay alive for that number 6 seed, which is Very, very important. Obviously, you can avoid the play-in game. You don't have to do all that stuff. So it's a game that they really needed. And, yeah, I mean, you look at who the Pistons, they had not Isaiah Thomas, but Isaiah Livert on the floor in the starting lineup. And, and this was a tough game for the Heat. So, yeah, not the kind of effort that you want to see, but you get the win. And in the end, that's what matters this time of year. It's, everybody's a little bedraggled here. So, the Heat are trying to get themselves across the finish line with with as much hope for that 6th seed as possible. And, they're still in the running. They've got a tough game. I'm sure they were looking ahead a little bit. Philadelphia's playing very well. They got to play Philadelphia on Thursday. And then they close with 2 winnable games, the Wizards and the Magic. So, probably looking ahead a little bit last night, so I wouldn't overreact too much. I know that's tough to say to Lubie because that's part of his DNA. But
yeah, he was screaming.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure, but yeah, they're still very much alive for that 6th seed, and if they can beat Philadelphia on Thursday, you got to give them a pretty good chance.
So, Sean, we talked with you in the offseason. We talked with you during this season. You've recently talked about the Heat with the big move. Either they've said they were trying to, they weren't able to do it. So this offseason could set up for, if not a big move, some kind of substantial move or some kind of substantial roster change. What's interesting to me is I think they were the top 3-point shooting team last year. Now they're, I think, bottom 3 to 5. And they have like 90% of their 3-point shooters still on the same team. Have you seen that before where all that changes is that guys who are good at shooting threes over the course of an entire season become bad? Because to me, as a guy who's watched basketball my whole life, yeah, guys have off games. They have off stretches. Yeah. But in an entire season where 4 or 5 guys just forget how to shoot threes is utter. Like watching last night, like you could play the worst team in the league if you're missing wide open, like just air. Gabe Vincent airballed a wide open 3. Hero and Robinson bricked wide open 3s, and I'm like, oh, that explains why they've sucked so badly. Like, what in your mind has happened? Because I've never really seen anything like that from one year to the next.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys are the same, that I get a little rankled when I hear announcers say, well, it's a make or miss league, because of course it's a make. We know that. It's you either make the shot or you don't. I get it. But in this case, there's something to that, because I think that you had last year, you had guys shoot as well as they ever have. Whether it's Caleb Martin and Max Strus, certainly Gabe Vincent. And this year, it hasn't, none of these guys have really tanked in their numbers. They've just sort of come back to where they usually are. When you get something like that happening, then you're going to see a general thinking. And they don't have a Ray Allen on this roster. They don't have great shooters.
They don't even have Mel Allen at this point.
They don't have Mel Allen either. That's right. And a guy like Duncan Robinson, obviously, we know what's happened to him, that's sort of emblematic. So it's just sort of a reversion to the mean a little bit. These guys weren't great shooters. A lot of them had really good years shooting the ball last year, and kind of came back to earth this year. Like I said, no huge collapses. Gabe Vincent is a great example. He shot 37% last year, which is over his usual, and he's back down to 34% this year. So not collapsing, but back to more where you expect it to be.
It's known as Dion Waiters syndrome around Heat circles.
Yeah.
You're thinking, we really gave this guy $80 million after that year, where we were at 1 point, 11 and 30.
That was the aberration, not this.
Yeah, that was a wild one. And every now and then the Heat, Lubie's talking about these big moves, but it seems like as good of a well-run of a franchise as they are. Obviously, we have great respect for Pat Riley's executive acumen. But once in a while they get snookered, and it seems like they may be in that spot right now. All right, what's your feeling? I normally am offended. I used to be anyway. My sporting sensibilities were upset whenever playoffs seem to be getting more and more bastardized by adding more teams in. And yet, I think the element of intrigue and added spark to, so-called meaningful games at the end of the regular season, which the Heat now have 3 games left, and Brooklyn has 3 games left, and they're of some, at least, a level of importance here, because you do want to, as you suggested, avoid having a 1-game proposition and maybe drop out of the playoffs. How do you see the expansion of the playoffs? Are you also, were you opposed to it at first, like I was, and now think that it's a good thing, or what was your position on that, and how do you feel about it now, the way it's working?
Yeah, I kind of felt it was unnecessary that the race for the 8th seed was usually interesting enough, but this has added a different level of getting into that top 6 and having that be of significant interest, and then being in the top 8, because if you've got 7 or 8, then you're playing at home in one of those games, and you've only got to win 1 game, and then being in the top 10. So you've got sort of 3 levels of the playoffs that you're talking about, and yeah, I didn't foresee that being all that interesting, but it certainly has been. So yeah, there's it's a wrinkle, and the play-in game I like. I always am in favor of fewer games, so I'd like to see them roll back and go back to maybe even just 78 games, to cut out 4 games, to kind of allow a little more room for these playing games and have them count in the stats. They don't count, so you could score 100 points in that game and it'll be as if it never happened. So that's a little weird to me. So,
yeah.
I'd like to see them tweak that a little bit, but yeah, I think it's been successful.
Yeah, certainly more cities are involved, and I guess part of the reasoning and the rationale behind it would be, and it sort of worked in baseball, where you have a game sometimes, the last game in a regular season that would have absolutely no significance, and now it's for a chance to go to the postseason or not, and so everybody's got to play the season all the way through, except the occasional team that's tanking. Which in this case, I guess, you could look at the Rockets, maybe to a lesser extent than the Pistons, who have lost 22 out of 23, I think, now, except for last night. Speaking of which, though, I mean, you mentioned the lessening of the season. A new CBA was just struck. Now, I mean, I'm looking at it, and I'm usually an advocate for the players, and yet you're thinking there are scrubs that are making $15-20 million dollars a year that really don't make any great significant contribution to the teams they're on. Guys getting paid a lot like Ben Simmons, $78 million for doing nothing for the next couple of years, in all likelihood. How upset could you be with the agreement, and yet the players seem to be screaming that they always get screwed? What were your thoughts on what transpired there, and do you think it will bring about a positive change? If indeed any change is made at all. I know they had the mid-season tournament and a couple of other concepts I don't fully grasp.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the mid-season tournament. I just it's an attempt to drum up interest in winter basketball when the NFL is dominating things, and I don't see that necessarily being successful. But I also don't see a big it's a risk worth taking, I guess. It's a bit of a money grab, but hey, that's what sport is. On the professional level, hey, on the college level too, right? But so that's fine. The whole thing with players complaining, some did. I think most of them supported this deal, because look, in the end, what matters is there's a 50-50 split of revenue. And so everything becomes academic as to how you split that up. Who gets what and how much each team can spend. So that's what it comes down to. So players can complain about it, but the fact is that if the league takes in $6 billion, the players are getting $3 billion of it. And we can argue about hard caps and who should spend this, who should spend that. But the fact is that money goes to the players no matter what. So it's something where you can complain about this detail or that detail, but in the end, the players are going to get the same amount no matter what. So I'm not sure what the complaints are about for sure.
So Defo's always sort of made fun of me because we actually started our thing when this became a thing, because even by my age, the off season wasn't the thing. You actually cared about the regular season. The big names really didn't move, as you've seen the Barkleys and the Jordans and the Ewings and the Magics talk crap about this era because their era didn't do that. So the off season was, you paid attention to baseball and you didn't care about basketball because there was nothing going on. And then the years leading up to 2010 on shifted, where the offseason seemed to be just as, if not more exciting sometimes than the regular season. So I do that again now, and I like doing that with you because you do keep an eye on things like that. When you look at a Luka, and they went and got him help and it made them worse. When you look at the Blazers, where Dame, I love that he's loyal, I give him credit, but all they're doing is getting worse, the Blazers. How long do guys like that continue their loyalty? Because to me, I'm all about being loyal. I think it's amazing. But it didn't help guys like Kevin Garnett. It only hurt them. So, like, do you see the Giannis? It worked for. Good for Giannis. He gave them one last thing, and they went and got him a title. Cool. But the loyalty thing seems to hurt you when you're these great players more than help you, especially in an era where you see the great players leaving. Do you see these guys continuing to be loyal? And if not, where could you see them possibly going?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that loyalty has a sell-by date, and for Damian Lillard is a good example, and maybe Bradley Beal as well. They should be just about there at this point. I think 10, 11, 12 years, probably it's time. And Portland would like to move on. They would like to
really?
rebuild.
Even they want to go.
But they're not.
We don't want you to be so loyal here, Damian. Yeah.
Well, right. You're being a little too loyal at this point. Thanks.
Maybe you ought to lighten up a little bit. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We'd rather somebody else pay you $60 million. But Kevin Garnett's a good example of a guy who was loyal for about 12, 13 years, and then came to a point where the team wanted to rebuild, and he didn't necessarily want to leave, but he agreed to, and of course it worked out for him. He got a championship in Boston, and became really an icon in Boston, despite only playing a few years there. So, that's the kind of pattern that a guy like Damian Lillard can have, where he's not going to destroy his legacy in Portland by leaving at this point. I think that everybody appreciates what he tried to do for that franchise and what he did do for that franchise. So, and the way it's going to work, though, is that for somebody like that, he's got to come to them and say, all right, let's work out what's next here. Let's do something that's good for you guys, for franchise, get you draft picks, get you young players, and gets me somewhere where I can win. So that's going to be the next step there. It's not going to be something where this is going to be forced upon him. If he wants to stay, and Bradley Beal's in the same situation, Washington, if he wants to stay, he's going to stay. But the moment he comes to them and says, all right, get me out of here, let's work on this, then you're going to wind up seeing them. And the Knicks, I think, are the team that's probably watching all this with the most interest, especially after what happened with Donovan Mitchell last year. They're under some pressure to go ahead and make that big move, and Lillard could wind up being the guy.
Mitchell on a tear, 4 straight 40-point games with the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are sort of being overlooked. While everybody's saying, "Hey, well, you need that 6th spot or the 7th spot." The 4th and 5th battle. I think Knicks fans are very confident that they have, maybe crossed into a period where they're going to have very good teams with Brunson. But I think the Cavs are being overlooked by a lot of people, and Mitchell's been out of control. Did Joel Embiid, Sean Deveney, cement the MVP voting and the top vote getter position with this 52 he dropped on the Celtics last night?
Yeah, I think that went a long way towards cementing his case, and I'm not an advocate for one game, putting a guy over the top, but if we're talking about how the voting is going to go, I think that did have a significant impact on as people are sitting down and filling out their ballots, which they'll be doing in the next few days, that's going to be something that will be very present in terms of how people proceed from here. Certainly, if they were able to jump up and grab that second seat from Boston, which isn't going to be easy at this point, but if they were be able to do that, then that would be the bow on it. I think that would guarantee that Joel Embiid wins the MVP. But even without that, I think with the way Philadelphia has played, with the way he played in the second half, Jokic has a good argument, and Giannis Antetokounmpo has a good argument. I think it'll probably come down to Jokic and Embiid. And a lot of people will say, well, Denver's the number one seed in the West, and Philadelphia is just number 3 in the East. But both teams are 52 and 27
Yeah,
at
same
this
record.
point. So I mean, they've got the same record. So I don't buy that. And it's just a matter of how important Embiid has been. I think there's no question that he's been as important to that team as any player in the league.
Am I misleading Lubie? And I've been telling him this since actually when it looked like it was impossible to conceive that it would be unwise to sleep on the Lakers as a potential team to maybe even represent the West. Are we wrong in that position, or does it look like maybe there's some merit to that argument now?
I think there's definitely merit to that argument. It's taken them about 3 years now since they won that championship to get it right. But it's a big asterisk. It's healthy. I mean, they've got to be healthy, and that's been their big problem over the last 2 years. No question between Anthony Davis and LeBron James. But if those guys are healthy, the way Anthony Davis has played in the last month and a half, he's kind of back to where he was before he got injured in January. So if that's going to continue, then there's very few teams that can guard him. I think what they've done, what they did at the trade deadline was it's all worked out exactly how they wanted it to. D'Angelo Russell, when he's been healthy, he's been fantastic. I think Jarrett Vanderbilt is an underrated addition. A guy like Malik Beasley can shoot it. And things that they do are just making more sense. They have a lineup now that makes more sense. They're playing Austin Reeves more, and Austin Reeves has been fantastic off the bench and has really made a case for Sixth Man of the Year with really just a couple of months. Probably won't win it, but he's been really, really important for them off the bench. So they've got a lineup now that just makes more sense, and they really haven't had that, like I said, for 3 years. In addition to not being healthy. So, the changes that they made and the fact that the Western Conference is no great shape at this point, you'd have to give them a chance, assuming they get in the playoffs and no matter what the matchup, whether it's Memphis or whether it's Denver, no matter who it is, the Lakers are going to have a real chance to at least win that first playoff series and get themselves moving forward.
All right, one final thing, just transitioning. I'm sure you had an eye on the college playoffs and the Final Four. How much would you have bet against of your overall wherewithal, Sean Deveney, both FAU and the University of Miami being in the Final Four this year in college basketball?
It was the kind of year where there wasn't a dominant team, and I thought Alabama was going to be that team, and they weren't, and a lot of the blue blood, Kansas wasn't really believable as a dominant team. Duke with the changes that they've had, new coach and all that, you knew they weren't going to, North Carolina, a mess, so you kind of had an idea that it was going to be an unexpected Final Four. I did not, Florida Atlantic and Miami. No way, that was not.
Florida Atlantic. Think about that.
Exactly right. I mean, honestly, when I was filling out my bracket and I saw that they were number 9 seed, I was like, "How is Florida Atlantic a number 9 seed? That's pretty good."
Yeah.
I just had not paid much attention to them, and obviously, as we saw, it's pretty good. But yeah, it was that kind of year in college basketball.
Pretty wild, yeah. No, very entertaining tournament. It seems like you say it every year, or at least, 2 out of every 3 years. You're like, wow, I mean, that was the greatest tournament ever. But I really thought this one was sensational, especially so, I guess, for us, because we had this improbable run going with FAU and the University of Miami, who were very good all season long, although largely overlooked by the general public as a contending team for a championship. Sean, always a pleasure. Heavy.com, right? That's where we catch most of your stuff?
Absolutely. That's right, guys.
Okay, very good. Always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much for being with us.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Sean Deveney, man.
So, yes, we talked lots and lots of Heat with Sean Deveney, and we talked a ton about the NBA as the Heat are vying still for the 6th spot, which by most accounts would get them the Philadelphia 76ers in the first round. And what seems to be the MVP in Joel Embiid has been a tough year for the Heat. And we've talked ourselves a lot about the Heat's struggles from the three-point line. Either Skolnick, Mr. 5 Reasons, has joined us and talked about it. Sean actually made a lot of sense. It's not that this year's the aberration. Last year was. Max Strus, who's a random who no one's ever heard of, had a great year. Tyler Hero, who had struggled with three, was good last year, was pretty good from three last year. He's about the same this year. Duncan Robinson 2 years ago was great. Last year was not very useful, but was more useful than he's been this season. This season, he's not involved at all. Kyle Lowry did contribute a little bit at three-point line last year, does nothing this year. Gabe Vincent was vastly improved for himself. He's still not horrible, but again, he's down this year. What it was last year was a lot of guys really hitting on all cylinders, playing their best basketball of their career last season, and this year they've just come back to the pack. And the Heat were counting on them to get better from last year. The reality was last year was them being better. Now they're worse. So we will see going forward what the Heat really are. Jimmy Butler is as good as anyone in the prime time. He has 6 points, I think, going into the fourth quarter, or 6 points going into the second half. In the fourth quarter, I think he had 19. He was spectacular. That last, he were literally down by one with 5-6 minutes left. And Jimmy Butler single-handedly, every possession down, jumpers, fadeaways, getting to the basket, working the ball. He was pretty much an unstoppable force. And I get it. It was a Pistons team that they should have been doing that to all game, but no one else did. It was Jimmy Butler and no one else. Once again, he carried this team. He carried this franchise. It was a really impressive play from him, a really depressing game from the Miami Heat standpoint. We'll see how it finishes it out. What happens to the rest of the league? I don't know. The East seems still pretty open from those top three in the conference. I think the Bucks are head and shoulders the best, but the Celtics have been there before. They are very deep this year as well. The Sixers are getting James Harden to be a double-double guy every night and be the second guy on the team and have no problems with it. We'll see if it continues in the playoffs. He's never been good in the playoffs, but maybe or he struggled in the playoffs in the past. Maybe this year will be different. The Bucks are just, last year they were close, and that was with Middleton, their second best player, being hurt. If he's healthy, they're scary in the East. And the West is sort of a disaster. Defo keeps bringing up the Lakers. Yeah, it's not because the Lakers are great or they're playing better. Everyone else is bad. The Nuggets are good, but not great. The Clippers are eh. The Warriors are eh. The T-Wolves didn't take a step forward like people thought. The Blazers fell off a cliff. The Mavs were in the conference finals and added Kyrie, so they got worse. They're not even in the playoffs, let alone they're not even in the play-in game. And the Grizzlies are good, and they've hung around the top three all year, but John Morant's had his issues, so who knows what the hell that's going to be. And the Kings are fun, a really good offense. They're abysmal on defense, and I don't think they're going to do anything in the playoffs. It's a bunch of guys that have never been there before, never done anything. Sabonis was on a Pacers team that was solid. He wasn't Mr. Playoff veteran. I know the West it's wide open, and it's also sort of eh. It feels like the East is actually the better conference this year. So we shall see how the playoffs happen. We'll see what the Heat do in the playoffs, and we'll see if we can get playoff Jimmy to get some help from Bam, who has totally fallen off a cliff, and Hero, who's played better but still isn't an all-around player. Maybe Caleb Martin and Strus and Vincent and Lowry, who were supposed to be a huge part of this team, this year, maybe they can give us more down the stretch. We will definitely talk more about that. 7 to 9 tomorrow on the Defo Show with Lubie on South Florida Live. Check out our national podcast on the Believe Network, BLEAV.com. Search After Hours. Check out what we do here on Defo on 5. A little short bit, 15, 20 minutes of us doing our thing on 5 Reasons Sports Network and our South Florida infused content from what we do. The Defo Show with Lubie here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
Hey, folks, Tony Segreto here. Let me ask you a question. What do you look for when you go out to eat? Good food, obviously, friendly atmosphere, not too loud, but good energy, reasonable prices, and a place where you feel comfortable. All those ingredients, no pun meant there, are hard to find unless you're talking about the Texas Roadhouse. You see, they encompass all of those attributes. Really, really good food, amazing atmosphere, good for a family, good for a date, or just a night out for yourself, and prices that will make you extremely happy. Their ribs, unmatched. Steaks, hand-cut every day. Everything, and I mean everything, is made on site, including their incredible bread. It's the one day, folks, that you can forget about low-carb diets. Trust me when I tell you, Texas Roadhouse, your restaurant, your destination when you say, where should we go and eat tonight?
These days, we're all looking for comfort anywhere we can find it. Thank goodness for Landlubbers Raw Bar and Grill in Plantation, because they are making sure you are as comfortable as possible. First of all, they're not only open for delivery and pickup. All you have to do is go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both pickup and free delivery. You're going to have the best wings in the world. You're going to have a great burger. You're going to have their amazing soups. Again, Landlubbers, Raw Bar and Grill. It's nice and easy. Just go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both your pickup and free delivery. Thank goodness for Landlubbers for making you always feel right at home.
Play the ponies in style at Champions, the outstanding simulcasting room at beautiful Hialeah Park. Yes, the grand old lady of thoroughbred racing has never been more vibrant, and you can wager on the races from the top tracks around the country while enjoying a cocktail at the Brass Rail Bar or any of the fine food served throughout the facility. If poker is your game, you're covered in style, and you can play all your favorite Vegas-style games, including blackjack, craps, and roulette, in Hialeah Park's sizzling hot casino. Get a player's card when you walk through the door for all kinds of generous amenities, including our favorite, free play, when you come out to the ultimate casino and entertainment destination, Hialeah Park.